Things that have occurred in my life that brought me to the point that I am and was when I met members of the WIIA. And one of the main things that I learned early on in life, in fact I was only 16 years old when I took a job in a produce shop in downtown Battle Creek, Michigan. And while I was waiting on people one day, I was approached by a black woman who said, "You did not wait on me, and I was next in turn. Now you have a black heart. I may have a black face, but you have a black heart." Well, at 16 years old, I was very impressed by that. And I searched and searched my memory, thinking what motivated me to do that, if anything. And I think that I was just totally unconscious of what I was doing. I did wait on the other woman. And that memory of that woman confronting me has stayed with me all of my life, because it was my first introduction to the rage that was felt by many people. The next image that was imprinted on my mind was when my husband and I were living in Michigan. We went to Detroit for a weekend of fun. And we saw a billboard advertising a young comedian whose name was Dick Gregory. Well, I had never heard of Dick Gregory, but we thought, well, it's a supper club. We'll go have dinner and we'll see what he has to say. Well, we walked into the supper club, and yokels that we were, Harmon didn't have a shirt coat on, and so they presented him with one that was 2 sizes too big, and we went into the main dining room and were seated. And the lights came on, the lights dimmed rather, and the spotlight shone down on a young man sitting on a stool all alone on the stage. And he was smoking a cigarette, and the smoke was curling above his head and rising to the ceiling. And he opened with a joke that went like this. My wife and I just bought a house in Detroit, and we decided that we were going to integrate a neighborhood. So we got moved in, and he said, one morning several weeks later, I was out mowing the lawn. And one of the white ladies in the neighborhood passed by, and she stopped and she said, "Oh, you do such a lovely job of maintaining this lawn. What do you get for this?" I get to sleep with a lady inside. That was my first introductory to Dick Gregory. Well, I followed his career through the years, and as you probably you older folks know, Dick Gregory became one of the primary activists in the racial movement. And he several times went on a fast and lost extreme amounts of weight. And as far as I know, Dick Gregory is still alive.
Yes, he's still doing it.
That's good to know. Shortly after our weekend in Detroit, Harmon and I married. And he was transferred to Dallas after a few years. And just before he got the transfer, we were aware of what was going on in Little Rock. The high school was being integrated by black students. And I felt drawn to that. And I said, Harm, let's drive past the high school. And I just want to take a picture of it. So we pulled up on the front and we sat there in silence. Our children were in the car with us. And I'm sure they wondered what we were feeling at the time. But it was reverence. It was reverence for the people who took their children to that school and dared integrate that high school. Well, as we all know, that led to many other schools being integrated. Then on to Dallas, 1963. And you all know what happened in 1963. That was our introduction to Dallas. Shortly after the assassination, Harmon and I had joined a church in Irving, and he was appointed head of Social Concerns Committee. And we learned that a meeting was going to be held out here in Bear Creek. And I volunteered to attend that meeting. And I can't remember now what building it was, but it seemed to be well filled with people from all over the Irving area. And standing to the left, and Ken Hearn may remember this better than I do, but standing to the left of the main speaker were 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 young men. One of them was Van Bagby, one was Kenneth Hearn, and the other was James Oliver. Who else was there? I don't know. But the main speaker was a minister from the Ministerial Alliance of Irving. And he proceeded to tell us that this group of young men had asked to have a conference, a meeting with the Ministerial Alliance. But the Ministerial Alliance did not have room on their calendar. Well, immediately, my hackles arose, and I stood up and said, Sir, do I understand that you did not try to rearrange your calendar? And he replied, I said there was no room on the calendar. Well, images of apartheid went through my head. I thought, my God, right here in Irving, Texas, we are experiencing what they experience in South Africa. Well, the second time, when I said to him, I asked him the second time, does this mean that you cannot arrange any time to meet with these men? And he stomped out of that room. His face was red, and that was the end of the meeting. So I went up and met these members of the WIIA, and that was my first introduction to them. And they invited Harm and me to come out and attend one of their meetings, which we did. And so you've all heard the rest of the story about proceedings of WIIA, except for one. I don't think anybody has told this story yet, but it was decided that we would integrate the swimming pool, the public swimming pool in Irving, which is the center, recreation center. I don't know if it still exists, but do you know what it was at?
I think that is, yes.
And